You're listening to Ramadan Radio Wolves, broadcasting on 87.8 FM and also streaming to Facebook and to YouTube. My name is Rajiv Dhanjal and I'm presenting a show called Plugged In IT Skills for Everyone. Okay, this is a 1 hour show and it'll be in two parts with about 24 minutes in each part. So I'll be talking in two sections. Um, I'm quite passionate about IT, and this is the fourth show, so you've probably heard me say that a few times now. So I try to speak slowly and explain things in a way that hopefully everybody will understand, but sometimes technology can be a little bit complicated and therefore it might go above people's heads sometimes, but I'll try and refrain from doing that. Okay. Now, over the last 3 weeks, I've tried to explain some of the fundamentals of IT, technology, the internet, devices, in the hope that people will feel less worried about using the technology and that they will give it a try, because the fact of the matter is it is here to stay. And just like we didn't have telephones before, we didn't have motorized vehicles before, we now have technology, and it's something we should all really try and embrace because it is here to stay. So having spent the last 3 weeks trying to calm everybody's nerves, I have to today say something that might sound like it's the opposite of what I've been saying for the last 3 weeks. And I'll start off with an analogy. I'm going to talk about cars for the next moment or two. For those people who didn't drive before, and of course we were all too young to drive before, but we've seen cars and we've seen the convenience with which, when you get your own car, it gives you the ability to go to all sorts of places that you couldn't easily get to before. Somebody else had to take you, or you didn't know how to drive. But as soon as you learned how to drive and you said to yourself, wow, this is great, I can now go to all sorts of places at my convenience, at my right time. And as I say, you get to the point where you think, how did I ever live without a car? However, despite all the convenience, there are inherent issues about cars that you really cannot ignore. So, for example, make sure you've got your seatbelt on. Make sure you've got good visibility. Make sure you've got um, make sure your car has been obviously paid for. Make sure it's been taxed, it's been MOT'd, it's working correctly. Make sure you've got gas in your car, petrol we call it, water, all the aspects of being able to drive a car. Make sure they're all safe. Make sure you're safe to drive. If you need glasses, make sure you've got the right sort of glasses on. And then when you're driving along, beware. Make sure that you've got space to drive the way you need to drive in a safe way. Make sure you following the limits. Make sure that if it's raining, if it's snowing, if the roads are not clean, if your windscreen is not clean, these are all potential hazards. But each one of those hazards can be adjusted for. And so, in that sort of analogy, I'm going to suggest that there are things about the internet, things about devices that we really need to pay attention to. Otherwise, if we get too excited about using the internet, we could cause ourselves problems. Okay, we could cause ourselves problems in the same way as we could cause ourselves problems if we try driving and we haven't taken all precautions. So the word I'm going to use in terms of these precautions is security. So you may have heard of cyber security, but there are other aspects of security that need to be considered, and as long as those are taken into account, the internet can be quite a safe place, and the technology can be safe to use. So let's start talking about security. The first thing I want to talk about is device security, and another word for device is technology. And as you know, this program is called IT, Information Technology. So let's deal with technology first. And the thing I've spoken about the most is a mobile phone. Virtually everybody has a mobile phone these days, and for those people who don't have a mobile phone, it's relatively easy to get a hold of. It's relatively easy to learn to use, and I've spoken about these devices for the last couple of weeks. They are potentially, for people who don't have a lot of experience with IT, they're a great starting place to learn about the technology. However, one of the worries about using mobile phones is that what would happen if you were to lose your mobile phone? What would happen if somebody else, either maliciously or accidentally, got a hold of your device and was able to switch that device on and look at the information in that device? Now you may say to yourself, well, it doesn't matter that much, to be honest. I don't have anything to hide. I don't have conversations about military things. I don't have conversations about illegal things. I don't have anything to hide. That's a bit naive, because you probably have an address book. You probably have lots of people's names and numbers. You might even have other information about these people. You might, for example, have their home addresses, business addresses. You might have birthdays. You might have other such information that is perfectly fine for you to have, but those people may not want that information distributed to everybody. And by not protecting your device, you could inadvertently make all of that information available to other people effectively without the names of the people in your address book's permission. So that is one of the least reasons to protect your devices, but of course it affects the most other people, and so it is something you should consider, that protecting your device is not only for your own sake but for everybody else's sake as well. And as you start to use more and more aspects of IT technology, you may start sending emails, you may start sending text messages, you might start having WhatsApp calls which include text messages. You might have videos of your friends, your relatives. Either you've taken them or they've been sent to you. Do you really want to make those available to people who should not have access to them? So protecting your devices is important for several reasons. And the easiest way of protecting a mobile phone is by locking the screen, by locking access, and stopping people from being able to access any of the information. Now, this includes switching it on, so your phone might be switched off. If you lose your phone, if somebody else takes a hold of it, if somebody steals it, they can switch it on, but they might not be able to access the information. So to stop them from doing that, the simplest thing to do is to put a PIN number. Okay, PIN number. PIN number stands for personal identification number, and it's something that only you should know about. So if you have a mobile device, if you have a mobile phone, the easiest way to protect it is with a PIN number, and PIN numbers are typically either four numbers from 0 to 9, or they may be 6 numbers or there might be 8 numbers. Now, the longer the number, the more difficult it is for somebody to guess at. And by making it more difficult to guess at, one of two things will happen. It'll take you longer to access the information. It'll also take somebody else longer to try and figure out what it is. And the longer the number, the less likely they're going to be able to get into your information. Okay, so PIN numbers. A few things about PIN numbers. Don't make it obvious. Don't have a PIN number like 1, 2, 3, 4, or even 2, 3, 4, 5, or all the numbers that are the same, like 1, 1, 1, 1. You probably can't do it with modern devices, because modern devices will say that number's too easy. We don't accept that as a number. But there are other numbers, like for example your own birthday. This is easy for somebody to guess at if somebody malicious who knows you. It might be the birthday number of one of your children, somebody that you know. So this is what we call social engineering. Somebody will say, oh, that's a lovely little child you've got. When's their birthday? And of course, they're not really interested in their birthday. They might just be interested in knowing what might be the PIN number of your device. Okay, so that's one thing that you don't do. You don't have a very, very simple number. You don't have a number that's socially easy to guess at. And another thing you might not easily realize is that if you're sitting on a bus, if you're in a place where people can see behind you and you're typing your number in, that might be enough for them to be able to notice what number you've used and to remember that, so that the next time they see you, or in fact if they pickpocket you, or if your phone falls out of your pocket, they can then suddenly get in. They can suddenly get into your device simply because you made it too easy for somebody to see what your number was. Okay, so numbers are the easiest way, and invariably they will often be always available, but that's only, as I say, one step better than having no protection at all on your device. That can lead to all sorts of disasters, as I've also already mentioned. Okay, so no protection at all, possible disaster. PIN numbers, that's a good way of securing your device, making it very, very difficult for anybody else to get into if you take all the precautions. The next thing you might want to use is what we call a fingerprint. So quite a lot of mobile phone devices have a fingerprint which you put onto your screen. So there'll be somewhere on your screen, there'll be a picture of a fingerprint, and quite often people either use their thumb or their index finger, and they'll put that down, and it doesn't matter who sees it, because your fingerprint is unique to you, or should be, and they will not be able to, the malicious person will not be able to log into your phone by using their own fingerprint. So even if you do this in a public place, your fingerprint is a lot safer than your PIN number. Now, of course, if something happens to your finger, if it's too dirty, if you've burnt your finger by accident, and your fingerprint normally would have worked but now suddenly stops working, you do still get the opportunity to access your device with a PIN that you've already set in advance. But of course, because you're not using that PIN very often, you're unlikely to have given that PIN number away again, unless you use a very, very simple PIN number that people can socially engineer or guess at. Okay, some of the modern phones have another device or another mechanism for unlocking the device, and that's called facial recognition. Okay, facial recognition. So you look at your screen, and it might ask you to move your head side to side or up and down, and if it recognizes you, then it says, okay, then well, that's as good as a fingerprint. So in that case, your phone gets unlocked. However, if your face keeps changing, if you start growing beards and moustaches and covering up part of your face and having different sorts of glasses on, different kinds of headdresses on, you may struggle sometimes with facial recognition. And in the very, very unlikely instance where you've got a twin who looks very much like you, it's entirely possible that you have now just shared the access mechanism to your mobile device with somebody else that you may not wanted to have done. Okay, so these are the different ways. These are some of the different ways in which you can secure your device, and I've given you some of the reasons why you should secure your device. But of course, there are many, many more reasons why you might want to secure your device. So that, for example, if you've got a history of websites that you've been looking at, people might think, oh, now that I've unsecured your device, oh, these are all the places that you visit. These are all the, for example, banks that you might have a bank account with. So you might be giving too much information away again, simply by your browser history or by the names of people, the names of businesses that you might make telephone calls to. Okay, so that's all I'll say about mobile devices for now. The next level of mobile devices are tablets. Now, tablets are two ways of thinking about them. They're either a big mobile device, in other words, you have a much bigger screen, but it's also likely that you may not be mobile with it. In other words, you may not travel with it. If you do travel with it, then all the same kind of precautions apply as will apply to a mobile device. If you lose that device, if it's stolen from you, it's got all sorts of valuable information on it that you may not want other people to have access to. A lot of the ways of protecting a mobile tablet device are very, very similar to a mobile phone device. In other words, you may well have the PIN number, you may well have the fingerprint recognition, you may well have the facial recognition. One thing I failed to mention, as I say, it's one of the many ways of securing a device. You will see people with 3 dots on their screen, and they will make a little pattern. They might make some sort of zigzag pattern, something similar. The longer that pattern is, the more difficult it will be to have a guess at. But if you just make a Z shape by pressing the 3, by moving your finger along the top 3 buttons, going across, and then the bottom 3 buttons, that really is too easy to guess at. And so all those zigzag patterns, zigzag types of patterns, I call it a zigzag pattern. It doesn't have to be a zigzag, it could be a square, it could be something quite complicated. But again, those are things that people can try that a facial recognition or a fingerprint protection, as I say, dots are too easy to try. Likewise, PIN numbers are too easy to try. They are still quite difficult, but it's easy for somebody to try, and they might just get lucky. Okay, right. The next level up of technology is a home computer. Now, with a home computer, you don't have the same problems of people looking over your shoulder as you do in public. You have a lot fewer people who are going to accidentally find your computer. However, there are many, many cyber criminals who have ways of accessing your home device, and therefore, at the very least, you should have some sort of user ID and password on your computer. Now, in this instance, passwords tend to be words or even several words. Okay, so they say that you should have good secure passwords. I'm going to talk about online services during this show, but what I'm going to say about online services also applies to your PC device. Now, the simpler your password is, the easier it is for other people to hack. Okay, so people can hack your computer in so many ways these days. I couldn't possibly go through all of them, but if you have in the simplest of cases, if you have a password that's just a number from 0 to 9, or from 0 to 99, or even from 0 to 999, such simple numbers excuse me can be guessed at so easily that in this modern age you may as well not use that as a password. In fact, if you try setting that up as a password, it just won't work. The computer will say, this is far too easy, I'm not going to allow you to use that as a password. In fact, quite often you need at least something like minimum of 6 characters for your password, possibly 8, in some cases 10, sometimes it's even longer than that in certain very, very secure locations. For example, banking applications, applications where it's just too risky, making it easy for other people to guess at. Okay, so when you're trying to choose a password, quite often it's going to have to be something that is easy to remember, and therefore people will quite often have some sort of word. And a word, so for example, a lot of people in Wolverhampton are supporters of the Wolves football team, so they might use Wolves as a password. But if people know that you're a Wolves supporter, you should not really use Wolves as a password, or the names of your children, or the names of your pets, because again, these are all words that are possibly subject to what we call social engineering. You bump into somebody and they say, oh, that's a nice pet you've got there. What's the name of your dog? Or what's the name of your child? And therefore, you can almost give away too much information just by being friendly. So what people are saying these days is you should have a complicated password. So for example, you can't just have wolves, WOLVES, all in small letters, or even all in capital letters. You should have a word that's a mixture of capital letters and small letters. You should have a number in there somewhere. You should have possibly a special letter. A special letter, you'll all be familiar with @ signs. You'll be familiar with an exclamation mark, a hyphen, an underscore. There are a whole load of characters that are on your keyboard which make it more and more difficult for somebody to guess at. So if all they've got to do is guess a number between 0 and 9, it won't take long at all for a computer hacking algorithm to work out what your password is. But by making it bigger and bigger and bigger, it takes longer and longer and longer. And by making the variety of letters, and I use the word letters loosely, characters I should really use, by saying, okay, each character of your password can be any one of 26 letters of the alphabet, plus 26 more, because those are the capital letters, plus another 9, because those are the numbers, plus a whole bunch of something like 32 special numbers or so, special characters or so. It means that somebody has to guess, or some computer has to guess, one of 96 possibilities for each character of your password. And the more characters there are, it means there's 96 times 96 times 96 times however long your password is. And once you get to about 10, 15 characters, it takes hundreds of years, even longer, for any computer algorithm to work out what your password is, unless you pick a really silly one, something really, really easy. So again, to make it very, very difficult for anybody to hack into your computer at home, have a good strong password. And I think what modern people are saying is to make it easy, rather than having something with all funny characters in and all funny to remember. Try something simple like 3 words, hyphen between them. It's a sunny day. It's nice and easy to remember. Put some dashes in, put some dots in, put some other characters in. The fact that it's a sunny day is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. The fact that somebody has to guess 14 characters is difficult. And why should they guess it's a sunny day? Likewise, if you choose 3 simple words that potentially are not even related, but mean something to you, then that actually means it's easy for you to remember, but hard for somebody else to guess at, because the password is so big. So that's my advice with passwords. Nice big password. Make it easy for yourself to remember. Don't make it an obvious one. Okay, so that's device technology. The next thing, we've got about 7 minutes left of this first section. The next thing I'm going to talk about is network security. So that's where the plugged in part of plugged in IT skills for all comes in. So you've secured your device, whether it's your mobile phone or your tablet or your PC. You've made it nice and secure, so that if somebody gets a hold of it physically, they can't access your device. But what about the network that you're trying to access? Okay, so the first and most obvious place is your Wi-Fi network. Okay, so you're sitting at home, you've got a Wi-Fi network, and your next door neighbours may well have a Wi-Fi network. In fact, within reach of your equipment, there might be lots of Wi-Fi networks. And each of these Wi-Fi networks has a name, and some people might use their surname as their Wi-Fi network name. Again, you're basically telling everybody who you are and whose network it is. Quite often people like British Telecom will start with a network name that says BT Hub. EE might start with something familiar to ET. Virgin Media quite often has an obscure number, but that starts with WM. So these network names don't always tell you who it is, which side of your neighbours it is, but the strength of your network, the strength of the networks that are near you become less and less as they go further away from your house. Your network in your own house will be the strongest, but the ones near you will be weaker and weaker and weaker. However, there might be somebody parked in their car in front of your house that can pick up your network and will think, well, that's the most strong signal. I wonder if I can have a guess at the network password. Now, network passwords quite often come very, very obscure. They don't have to be entered every time. So why change it into something easy? Why change it into something easy? Because whoever's using the equipment is only going to use that network password once and they're in. However, you might have lots of visitors visiting you, and you may well have given that network password to lots and lots of people. People have visited you, and the question then is, what happens to their devices if they lose them and within their device is coded your network password? So again, this is something to be wary of. You may want to change it every now and again, or you may want to keep it obscure so that anybody passing by has got really very, very little chance of working out what that network password is, and that your friends and relatives who you give your password to, if you give them an obscure password, they are less likely to lose that. And if your name is obscure, it's even less likely that if their device is lost, that somebody can work out whose details they are. Now, what happens if you don't even put any network security on your Wi-Fi password? Well, now you're in grave danger of being effectively listened to, and the word that we use within IT networking is packet sniffing. Packet sniffing. Packet sniffing is a little bit like sitting on a bus and you can hear what other people are saying. Okay? Unless they're speaking in a foreign language you don't understand, you can pretty much get the details of what they are saying because they haven't protected the data. So packet sniffing means that they can work out the information you're exchanging with the network devices, the network locations you're connecting to. Okay, so that can be a problem, and therefore don't ever use what we call an open network. Now, it sounds fairly obvious. Oh yes, I'd never use an open network. I'll absolutely secure the network in my house. But wait a minute, what if you go somewhere where there's free Wi-Fi? What if you go somewhere where the network name is published for you? For example, you might go to a store, you might go to a restaurant. McDonald's quite often says, oh, you can use free Wi-Fi. Here's the name of the Wi-Fi network, and here's the password. Okay, but the thing is, everybody knows the password because it's published there in that location. So now everybody can potentially be on the same network that you are on. Okay, so if you're sitting in a public place using a public Wi-Fi network, people, malicious people, can sniff using devices, using equipment that's fairly easy to get for hackers. They can tell who you are communicating with, and if you are communicating with an endpoint, with a service, for example, where there is no protection on that website, and you are asked to put in a user ID and a password, and that password is visible, then you've basically given other people all the information they need to pretend to be you. So I've got about a minute left of this first section. I'm going to basically remind people that network security, device security, these are big issues. They are not too scary as long as you know what to look out for. And if you don't know how to drive a car, don't get into a car and try driving it. It's the same with computers. If you really don't know what you're doing, then get some help. There's a lot of people who will help you, myself included. We, the Secret Angels, we do help people. Contact us if you've got a particular issue, what you're worried about, then come to us, and we can try and help you and warn you and explain to you how you can protect yourself. Okay then, so we're going into our break now, and I'll see you in about a few minutes time. Thank you. Welcome back, listeners. This is Rajiv Dhanjal presenting a show called Plugged In IT Skills for Everyone. This is part two of the show. We have around about 12 minutes left. So, as a quick reminder, I have been talking about security and the importance of security. You should protect your devices because your devices contain lots and lots of important information that a hacker might want. You should protect the places that you are connecting to, your Wi Fi networks. What can happen if other people access your Wi Fi network or indeed access your computer? And there are many, many ways for hackers to do that. However, there are many, many ways for you to protect your devices so that they don't get a chance. Okay. The next thing I wanted to talk about is data security. And what data security really means is that you've protected your device, you've protected your network access. However, you now are going the other way. So you now, instead of worrying about people who are listening in or trying to break your device or break your network, you are now trying to access a service. So, for example, you might be trying to access a service from the NHS. You might want to, for example, reorder some medicines. You might want to book a test, a COVID test, or a blood test. These are things you can do. These are services that are made available to you from the NHS websites. So what would happen? So you would take your mobile device, you'd take your PC at home, and you'd log into the appropriate website. Okay, websites these days, when they're particularly personal, like the NHS website, they won't let anybody in who says, "My name is Mr. or Mrs. whoever." They'll want you to probably have an NHS number. You'll probably have a password to use to prove it is who you are. Now, what can happen if you've written your password down in your mobile phone and somebody's got access to that? Well, we talked about that before. Protect your mobile device. What happens if somebody's sniffing the packets because you're actually accessing the NHS website from a restaurant with open Wi-Fi, and somebody's sniffing those packets and thinking, "Oh, what's your user ID? That's your password." So, of course, you don't want to do that. You don't want to make sure. You want to make sure that none of that's going on. So, what else can go wrong if you access a website and the website you haven't taken all the right precautions? Okay, so here's one example. There's a website called something like Your Neighborhood. There's Rowdy Neighbors. There's all sorts of such websites that are not so robust with the way they protect the information on their website. So you might, for example, log into such a website and it says, "Oh, you must set up a user ID, you must set up a password." And so that's what you do. You set up a user ID, and you use something very, very familiar to you because you think it's not really that important. But you use the same password that you're using in lots and lots of other places. For example, your NHS website for reordering your medicines. You use the same password as the password for a not so robust website. So now if somebody's packet sniffing, they have now got potentially your password for lots and lots of places. Okay, so what sounded like a very secure NHS website with a robust user ID that doesn't even include your name, might not even include your NHS number, and you put a nice strong password on it to stop people from getting in. Now you've potentially given that password away. Okay, so not by anything that you've done to your NHS website, but by some other website, some website that's a lot less secure. Okay, so I'm not going to go into all the different things you can do with NHS websites, but just beware that without doing anything wrong, by doing something a little bit lax somewhere else, website. The same can happen with banks and building societies. These days, you all know that banks and building societies, they're trying to close more and more branches. It saves them money. You may have heard of Santander closing a load of branches. You've heard of mergers between, for example, Virgin Money, Nationwide. As these branch closures occur more and more, you have more and more need to access your banking services through the internet. And again, banking services are very, very secure. But again, it's very, very easy to, for example, go to a public place. You may, for example, go to the library because you know that there's access there. You might go to another place, a college. You might use their equipment and somebody's looking over your shoulder, see your details, see your password, and they can then access all of your details simply by just looking over your shoulder. That's all they have to do in some of these places. Just look over your shoulder. Government services. Might want to check your retirement age. You might want to update or change your password or your. These websites are fairly secure. Fairly secure. But again, in the wrong situation, information. Okay, you can give away too much information. One thing that happens sometimes is that you'll see a website saying, not a website, sorry, your browser saying, oh, do you want me to remember your password for you? Save you having to type it in next time. Now, very, very convenient when, of course, you're at home, when you're in a protected environment. But if you are in a place where that equipment is going to be shared, that is a disastrous thing to do, because the next person who comes along could try logging into your bank or building society website, put in the number, and it'll type the password for that malicious user. Okay, so these are things that you have to be wary of when you're in public places or in any place where, as I say, other people might have access to the device that you're using. However, there is one good piece of news. A lot of these very, very secure websites now use something called multi-factor authentication. Sometimes you'll hear it called two-factor authentication. Sometimes you'll hear it called multi-factor authentication. And what it really means is that one method of identifying you is not enough. So, for example, particularly with some banking websites, they will ask you for a user ID and a password, and then they'll say, oh, by the way, we are now going to send you a text message to your mobile device, and we want you to type that text message in. Now again, this sounds great. This sounds like a second way of protecting your access. However, it applies especially when it's useful, rather, especially when, for example, you are on a PC, personal computer, and you try accessing a particular location, and a text message goes to your phone. So you type in that number or that temporary password, and of course that temporary password will always be just a temporary password, just for that one session login. What you really don't want to do is try accessing these websites from your mobile phone, and then when it says, oh, by the way, we're not really sure if that's you, we're now going to send you a text message to your mobile phone, and you need to type that number in. Okay, what can go wrong if you've lost your phone and you've left it unlogged, unsecured or unlocked, and somebody finds it? Multi-factor authentication doesn't help you in that situation, because they've now got both of those methods of proving that they are who you are, and therefore they can then get access to all the resources. Okay, that again could be a disaster if, for example, you are ordering something and perhaps they want to take that thing that you've ordered, for example, off Amazon, and you want to have it and they want to have it delivered in a different location from which they can pick that present up that you've basically paid for. Or worse still, they just don't like you, they just want to hurt you, they just want to order a whole bunch of things at your expense, and they don't really care. That's malicious people. Some people will do that. Other times, if they want to be even more malicious, they might say, oh, you know what, I think I'm going to change my password today. So they've changed your password, and now you can't get in, and at the very least you've got a whole bunch of inconvenience, and potentially worse than that, if it's an online type of access and they say, oh, no, we need you to log in with your correct password and prove who you are, you may not be able to do that, because there are some locations, some websites where you've just got no way to access them. They've got no customer helpline, and when that happens, you potentially have got no way into that website. Okay, so again, I've talked about really valuable websites, lots of places that you can access, get all sorts of services from, but if you are not prudent about data security, about passwords, about how you can lose a password, about all the dangers that are out there, then be very, very wary. Okay, we've only got a few moments left of this show. This completes the 4 weeks of this show at Ramadan Radio. So, as I say, if you need us, we are the Secret Angels, and you can access us by looking for secretangels.co.uk. Thank you.